This is Jacob2, and this is the second video we took of him. We had a first video to analyze, and then we worked on some corrections, and here's our second video afterward. So with Jacob, there's a few things we wanted to try and get in place. And looking at his first pitch, I see how he's leaning himself backward. For the most part, it looks like his nose is fairly close to being over that planted leg and his knee. And then he starts moving forward before he breaks his hands. Now, of course, he puts his hands quite high. That was something that we were trying to do to address a problem with his timing. So I'm not too worried about that. What I don't particularly enjoy is the journey his glove and hands end up taking. He's been taught this swing motion that kind of goes out. It's not a method that I encourage, but in this motion, it doesn't seem to be too bad. I like how he's pointing his glove for the most part toward his target. He's looking there. He's nice and level with his arms. As I'm watching his foot down on the bottom, we can see that it plants, more or less looking right toward the target. He leans forward. We can see that while his nose isn't totally over his knee, it's fairly close. The only thing that looks concerning to me from this angle is that hand might be going behind his head. And so that's going to create some problems in his accuracy and the pressure on his elbow. But we'll see that a little bit later. But his balance is good. He ends up throwing well. He seems to be braced on his front leg pretty good. And we can see through his follow through, it takes him forward. So that's a good pitch for Jacob. The only thing that I would probably say is this glove hand is not in good position in order to get a line drive if it was hit back at him. So that was encouraging for his first pitch. His second pitch here is a little bit different. He gets back not far the same distance. You can notice that his nose didn't make it all the way back. So really what he's done is he's just lifted his front leg. And now he's ended up breaking his hands before moving forward. Ideally, we want to lead with the hip, break the hands, and then step toward our target. It also looks like if you watch that left leg, watch this area here. Does he kick toward third base? It looks like it. So instead of stepping toward his target this time, he's going toward third base. Now he's got to swing his leg out. The danger that this often does is it'll open up his hips early. His glove's pointing toward his target again, which isn't bad, or which is good. But now we can see what's a little bit different is his trunk is starting to rotate. You can see that his shoulder is now opening up, and what is telling me is that leg kick toward third base has ended up opening his body, so that's going to take away some velocity. It looks to me like his arm is bent too close toward his head. He didn't get the ball back, and so we have a little bit of a different pitch coming in this motion here. And we can also see he's now looking toward the sky. Traditionally, what this ends up doing is it makes the release of the ball kind of going this way, so it's probably going to be a high pitch. We can see that his stride isn't as long, and while it's pointed at his target, he had a variety of things that is probably impeding the ability of this pitch. And then you can see his follow through has virtually no momentum taking him forward. So now we go from behind, and maybe we'll be able to see something we didn't see from the first angle. And we do. He's lifting his heel off of the ground. So now he's taking away a good portion of his foot from being able to push himself off of the rubber. I can't tell whether or not he's leaning back or not, but I can see that he kicks his leg out toward third base. So this seems to be a bit of a habit that's probably more in place. His legs, you can see here, instead of going straight toward the target, he's stepping out to the side there. And then that can just teach us why his trunk is already starting to open. And the problem that's going to end up happening now is he's going to have to throw across his body, and he's going to be taking away a lot of his velocity and his accuracy. Watch his arm as it probably slings across the side instead of over the top. And then he falls off toward first base. So the big problem there is because he's stepping toward third base. We'll see his heel lift off the ground again. So that seems to be a common feature that he's doing as he's trying to get his body up. But that's easily corrected. And with every pitch, I'm noticing that it's coming behind his head. What ideally we want to have is the hand back here, so that when he catapults it toward his target, he's going to be able to reduce the stress on that elbow. We can also see that his front toe is not pointed toward his catcher. However, unlike the last pitch, it's basically in line. But we can see that his trunk opened up, and because he's not pointing straight at his catcher, he's opened his body up too early, and he's taking away a lot of his velocity. And his follow-through doesn't have much momentum. So, the things that we will focus on with Jacob the next time is to try and keep his heel on the ground, have a more direct step toward home plate, and I'm going to try and work with getting that elbow from bending so his hand goes behind his head and rather stretches out back towards second base. Those are the first things that I'm going to want to address. But he has come far from when we first started with him.